office and go to the other.
Lovely.
Yeah.
All right, so it's 2:05. We should probably get started. So I'll do the introduction. So welcome everyone to the Alliance for Addiction Solutions. It's our monthly webinar. And today we're very happy to welcome Susie Hately. She is going to talk about one of the legs of our treatment for addictions. You know, we talk about mind, body, and then movement is also very important. Yoga sort of combines the two. It has the spiritual aspect to it, it has the movement aspect to it. So it's a very important part of treatment. And in my practice also, breathing, yoga, it's definitely a part of recovery. So we're very happy to have Susie Hately. She's a certified international from the International Association of Yoga Therapists. She's based in Calgary, Canada, and I'll have her introduce herself, but she has extensive experience doing yoga. She was just mentioning completely online. Of course, most of us prior to COVID were mostly in practice, physical office based. And so many of us since COVID have had to shift over. So I'm very, very happy to welcome Susie. And Susie, welcome. And we're not able to see you. I don't know if you wanted us to see you, but
Sure. Yes.
it's not off.
Oops.
Okay, there.
Can't hear him.
Great.
Yeah.
Would you mind introducing yourself a little bit?
Yeah, for sure. I'm happy to. So I think what's important to know about me is that I have a background in kinesiology and biomechanics. And I got into yoga for my own self many, many, many moons ago, like over 30 years ago now. And I was working with people who were in chronic pain at a chronic pain center back then. And then I started, and it worked so well for me, I started to integrate what I was doing with myself and with that clientele, and their results started to get better. And so I've just sort of continued to move and integrate the sort of ancient practices of yoga with movement dynamic. And then how I kind of ventured into the addiction world was by happenstance. My husband's son,
my daughter Emma.
My husband's son, he struggled a lot with different forms of addiction, and I kind of entered in on the scene well into that. So he was a single dad for a period of time, and his son was grown. So he was in his sort of early 20s when I came in, and when I was in that world. And it was, and so I was in a very much of a supportive role. And it was tricky. It was certainly tricky being someone who was coming into the relationship. And then also it was interesting is that my husband, has PTSD. We found this out a few years ago, PTSD, and hypervigilance from being a firefighter. And sometimes he uses alcohol. He had to use alcohol to buffer. And so it's sort of an interesting dynamic to kind of play into working with someone like his son, whose son is much, much improved now. And then also for him, right. And me being a support role in both of those scenarios, slightly different scenarios, but still there's a support role. And I find that, and what's so great about being with you all is that I find that there are a lot of people who find the support role really hard because it's very challenging. And we can get into hypervigilance mode. Like I remember very, very clearly working with like just being the stepmom too. We were just kind of always waiting for the other shoe to drop. Like it was like there's some sobriety, there's things that are kind of seemingly moving along, but not quite trusting that it was actually seemingly moving along. And so there's just this hypervigilant state that one can get into. And until we can sort of resolve that hypervigilance or retrain, really is a better word, the hypervigilance will always be there. And I learned this particularly with my husband, that like once he got to a more stable psychological state, I could actually do the work on myself, and I couldn't get there. And so a lot of this is very much informed by my experience, and I've been helping people out of pain for over 30 years, whether it's using therapeutic aspects of biomechanics or yoga nidra practices or that thing, but it was getting into this realm that was more because of my life. And interestingly, that as I was supporting my husband's son and then my husband, more and more people who are in that world I've interacted with. And again, what I hear over and over and over again is that there's, and I found this too, is there's just very, very little training for people in that support role. And it's not just in the addiction realm, it's really in any type of persistency of symptoms where, like, thankfully, people who are needing the support get the support, like the people who are unwell are needing the support. But again, it was so, you're kind of left out there, just sort of in the wind, right? Kind of blown in the wind. And so there's as much that we need to do for ourselves. And one of the greatest practices that I found that has been helpful is something called yoga nidra. And it's like, for me, when my husband got to a very stable space, or a more stable space around the hypervigilance, and he was able to kind of feel his body a little bit more and his breath a bit more. And I remember having the distinct experience of like, oh, I don't have to like be the glue that holds our family together here. I can actually take care of myself. But again, I did not know how to grip myself because I was so trained into the hypervigilance side, right? I was very, very good at hypervigilance, but not in an anxiety kind of way, more just like, I've got to pay attention to when the episodes are about to come. And I had done that a little bit with his son, and so I was trained. I was very well trained, and so the nidra practice was really great because I didn't have to do anything, and I would just listen to different nidra practices. And all yoga nidra is, if you're new to it, is it's a guided meditation. Yoga nidra is translated as yoga sleep. It's a non-sleep deep rest type of practice where you really can just lie there and listen to the guidance. It's different than, say, a shavasana. It's different than guided relaxation because it's enabling you to be alert and engaged while going into a very, very, very restful space. And a lot of work has been done on the veterans, the folks who have come back from various war-torn places and a lot of trauma-related scenarios, and have seen the impact of what can happen and how it can really, really shift and downregulate one's nervous system, which is really vital. And it's funny, interesting, well, fun, not in a haha way, but curious, and is that it's as important as for the supporter as it is for the person who is retraining their own selves or working through their own processes around addiction. So it actually works really well for both sort of sets of scenarios of what you're working with. But it's a very guided, specific practice that enables you to tune in and become aware of parts of your body and your breath, and the way that the brain waves start to change. It can just for me, what ended up happening, and when I talk about it with my clientele too, is what ended up happening is there was this opportunity of space of like, oh, I can actually recognize now when I'm moving into a hypervigilant state. Like, there's a difference between being alert and being hypervigilant, right? There's a difference between being engaged and being wired and alert, right? And so I was able to kind of unravel that place. I was still paying attention, but paying attention is very different than the hypervigilance. Hypervigilance is tiring. It's exhausting, really. It's that. So then there's the practices of a nidra practice combined with some breath practice, which is really common in yoga, and gentle movement can really shift and really, again, retrain the way that you are interacting with the world around you and the world around the person that you're interacting with, whether it's a family member or a loved one. And the attention and that awareness just brings an opportunity to be able to be the pause in the response, or a clarity of what reality actually is versus what a hypervigilance response can lead us to believe, right? Because the hypervigilance response feels very, very real. It's very, there's a wirediness, and for some people there's an anxiety to it, and it puts a different spin on reality that's not really so. But we don't know that until we're calmer, right? We don't know that until we're more downregulated. So yeah, so I'll stop there. Yeah.
I was going to ask, did your husband do this practice? Is that how he got out of the hypervigilance state?
So he, in combination with some other practices, yes. So one of the things that also helped me too is, and him as well, is we got him an aura ring. And what we were able to see is, it was someone with hypervigilance, the classic state of one's heart rate variability is that it's like flat. And we want to be able to have, like, we want our heart rate to be variable. And if you're vigilant, it's like you're always on alert, and it's just sort of like this. And when he started to practice, he ended up actually getting a lot of that back, and his physiology started to shift out of being in a really gripped kind of state. And he actually said one time, he said, yeah, I can do the nidra practice. I can do a breath practice that calms me down, and then I can go back into my vigilant state. I said, well, why? Why not learn how to be in a calmer state more often? And he's like, really? I can do that? I said, sure. Like, why not? And that's the beauty. And we're seeing more and more scientifically, and with some of these studies of the folks who are coming back from war-torn countries, is that you can absolutely retrain it. And there's now becoming more clarity that it can be retrained, which is opening up the possibility for so many people. Yeah.
Yeah, thank you for that.
So I think what I'm going to do is, do I have access to the chat here? Because I think what I'll do here is I can put into a sample practice that people can access, because sometimes when you're like, you may not have ever heard of this practice, and this is just one there. I just put it into the meeting chat, and I've just put one suggestion for people that they can start to practice. You can also find this all over YouTube as well. If you just plug in the like yoga nidra NIDRA, you'll find different ways that people talk about it. They've got, some people have music, some people have a more direct voice like me, or they have a soothing voice. And so it really depends on what kind of works for you, much like a lot of the apps that are out, like meditation apps. Some of the voices work for people and some of them don't work as well. And so it's like, depending on who you are. So if it's something that kind of gets your interest, then it's really helpful. This is also really important too for people who might be working with other folks, like you're a professional, like you're a counselor, or you are a psychologist or a support person, because there's beyond being a support person in a family scenario, because for some people it can be quite energy required in order to work professionally with clientele who are in a healing mode. So again, what this type of practice can provide is an opportunity for your nervous system to settle down, to move from a tired or wired space into something that's more recuperative and calmer. And it's like, I mean, I sometimes like using the idea of like flossing your teeth or brushing your teeth or any other type of cleansing practice that can just kind of let it off, as opposed to utilizing sugar or caffeine or other substances that take the edge off but aren't all that supportive. So I was thinking what could also happen here is that we've got about 10 minutes, is that I've put the link for a nidra practice for people, but I can also walk people through one if that would be like a really short one, because sometimes people think they need 40 minutes or an hour. And you don't. Like I've done practices that are 5 minutes long, and that's it. And so I can walk people through a 15-minute practice if that would be a helpful experience for people.
Have any like the differences between the different yoga practices? Like how is yoga nidra different from some of the other yogic practices? Like
I
what
think
is-
most people who would know yoga will know it as an asana-based practice. And we see the most of them as poses. And so most people and what's offered out there generally in the public is the practices of like asana-based yoga. And so with asana-based yoga, you're either doing static holds, or you're flowing through movement patterns, or you're using yoga like the yoga asanas, that's from a therapeutic perspective, but there's more of a movement base, whether it's static or dynamic. Whereas the nidra practice is a quiet based practice. People can typically are lying down. You can also do it in seated, but typically it's lying down. And it's like the difference between that and say a shavasana is there can be a guided body scan, but that has more of a relaxation component to it. Whereas you will feel typically more relaxed after a nidra practice, but you're working through the layers of your being. So with a nidra practice, you're working through your physical body, your capacity to breathe, but also the way that you're thinking and the way that you're feeling emotionally. So it's like you're becoming aware of what's present in your body and in your mind, not in a obtrusive way, but it's a way of growing awareness to what's actually happening within your system. And it's in that level of awareness that things start to shift. And you can do it, you kind of do it bit by bit by bit. Now, there are practices online on YouTube which don't go through all of those layers of our being. That there are that just some that just focus on, say, a body scan or focus on the breath more specifically than the whole thing. I've done some that are focused more on extended body scans, some that are on breath, some that bring it all together. This one here, the one that I posted in the chat, goes through all of the layers of our being. But it's a rich way of connecting with ourselves wholly, which is different than say the poses. Let's see. I'm already familiar with yoga nidra. Do you have any other practices in yoga teacher training? You are usually taught all the limbs of yoga, not asana. A big part of my training was that it's not just asana. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, so that my focus is I support people typically who are working through persistent pain, and I'm utilizing therapeutic applications of biomechanics with the yoga poses, breathing, meditation, and yoga nidra. So I'm combining all of those factions. I like to say that it's a sort of using a modern perspective of science and knowledge on the way the body moves with the ancient practices of yoga, yoga asana, yoga nidra, and meditation, breath. If I was going to kind of cover it all, I wouldn't say I specifically, if we're talking about limbs of yoga, I wouldn't say that I'm deliberately and specifically talking about yamas and niyamas, for example, but those enter into the mix as I'm working with people. But it's mostly through the movement, breath, and nidra meditation practices. And so the other practices that I have other than yoga nidra are the movement based or therapeutic based practices. And you can see I've got a lot of different programs on my website over at functionalsynergy.com that there's a lot of ways of applying movement dynamics and awareness to those movement dynamics to support people in getting out of pain. But as it relates to working with people and supporting oneself, if you are the supporter of someone with addiction, that movement piece is important, but also I have found working with clientele and myself that just from the history and the experience of that is that it can be tricky to simply use movement or asana in a retraining process. Maybe if you are wanting to just deal with, like you're dealing with the fact that you're in hypervigilance, or you're dealing with that alert state, that's where you can kind of play. But if you're looking to retrain it and come out of hypervigilance, whether you're working with yourself or with somebody else, that element of being able to downregulate your nervous system and retrain a more regulated system becomes really, really important. So then I see, so tell us more about retraining. So when I'm working with someone with retraining, this is where the yoga nidra practice becomes so interesting, but also the mindfulness and the awareness around movement patterns is fundamentally, we can't change anything that we're not aware of. And so the first piece of the puzzle is becoming aware. And I typically do that in a really, really gentle way. So I start with movements that are very, very small. And I'm looking at just the way that someone say moves, like how does their leg bone move in their pelvis, or how do their arms bones move in their shoulder sockets? So it's not like, let's do movement, let's do exercise. It's like, let's just take a real close look at the way that you are moving, and that people can then learn about where and how they're moving well, if they're not moving well, like where they're compensating. They start to really understand the efficiencies of their biomechanics. And then there we can, like, with that knowledge, we retrain their patterning by helping them move better. And that's probably the most succinct way that I can describe it without be doing like a demo. But then what you learn to do, because a lot of times when you're looking at, say, corrective exercise, or a lot of exercises out there, is people aren't moving very well while they do it. And so they might be overutilizing their hip flexors, or using their jaw to move into chair pose, for example, or they might come into tree and then brace with parts of their body, or hold their breath. And those are all patterns that we're not meant to hold our breath to do movement. And we're not meant to brace in the rib cage in order to do tree pose. And so it's helping people to, first of all, become aware of what those patterns are. And then you teach them how to move in a way that doesn't require those gripping patterns to occur. So it's all a retraining process. And sort of another way of looking at it is, when people are getting a hip replacement or a knee replacement, oftentimes before they go into hospital, they're limping, right? Which makes sense. And when there's an expectation that when the surgery is over, that they're going to get out of the bed and they're going to walk and they're going to be fine. But the walking pattern is a trained pattern. And so if you're limping before you go in for surgery, you will be limping when you come out of surgery, because you need to retrain that process, right? It's a biomechanical process that needs to be retrained, meaning you need to relearn how to walk again without that limp. Yeah. So it becomes really, really, really curious. And this is a really great question, because what happens if in retraining traumatic memories resurface and release? Yes, that can happen. And the way that the way that I work, and I can't speak for other people, but the way that I work is, I'm working with what's available now. So typically, because these movements I'm working with are very, very small, there's nothing like this. I'm not asking someone I'm not asking someone to do something they can't already do. So I'm not all of a sudden saying, I need you to think about your muscles in a different way and work this way, or with your posture, I need you to pull your chin back or pull your shoulder blades down because the way that posture is wrong or bad. That's not the way that I work. Sometimes those patterns those traumatic patterns can arise because the professional has gone too far in asking for change. So a great example of this is, I was working with somebody who was working with somebody else, and I'm not knocking the other professional, I'm just using this as an example of what can happen, is they were seeing another professional who was utilizing a release technique. And the idea about this release technique is, if you release tight muscles, for example, their intent is that the other muscles that are meant to kick up were supposed to kick up, but she released too much, and the other muscles hadn't kind of figured out how to start to, like, do the work, because they were still sort of quiet. Whereas what I was doing with her is it wasn't about like just rip off the duct tape and then, all right, let's get these muscles going. It's retraining the dynamic between someone's brain and body that it naturally, the duct tape, so to speak, naturally falls off rather than like trying to like pull it off or rip it off. Right. And so we're inching our way into processes. So then Lauren is added here. I did a hot yoga teacher training in January, my third teacher training. I had so much resurface that the teacher had no idea how to respond. It ended up being my problem and not their job. I respect that you're working in small increments. Hot yoga is too much release. This is a really good example. So it can be for sure, because you've got an external environment called heat, and you've got an intensity of a yoga teacher training. And so a lot of times I hear a lot about emotions that arise in those types of trainings because of the intensity of what's happening in the training program. And that's part and parcel of unfortunately, fortunately, the way that we want to look at it, that can happen. But the process can actually be faster and slower than that. So I like to say that the turtle always wins. So when we go slowly, results happen faster. If we try to go faster, like the person who was trying to do too much of a release and kind of hoping that the muscles would kick up, she was pulling off too much duct tape. She was trying to be the hare rather than like just going slowly along and helping. It's a network between the way to describe it is, in order to make muscles or make the body move, you got the brain that tells the muscle how much to contract and how far and how fast to contract. And that moves the skeleton. And so a lot of times people will try to get the muscles and go at the muscle and say, do this thing that I want you to do in order to move your skeleton. But what's actually needing to shift is the network communication between the brain and the muscle. And so when you work well between the brain and the muscle, you're only going to go as far as that network allows you to go. And so too often, I think people are like, whatever muscle is not engaging. And so we've got to get it engaging. And so there's this hammering at the muscle to get going, or a hammering at a movement pattern that's not accessible to somebody. But the teacher can sometimes over-engage at it. And then that makes people either have responses like you're describing, or it freaks them out. And so then their whole system is no longer feeling safe. It's on alert. It's on hyperdrive. And then they get more feelings of unsafe and of not safety. And so then they pull back even further, or the healing process gets stopped. Yeah. So you can do this in a much more you do it, I want to say gentle, but I think the better word is deliberate. You can do this in a much more deliberate way that really honors the network between brain and body, and really between all areas of our being. Yeah. All right. So lovely. So she's saying, I want to learn more about that, specifically which programs that you have. So the place to play is if you go to functionalsynergy.com and you want to even email me, I can walk you through it all. But there's a lot of programming that's there. Yeah.
I asked you this question in the chat. Can someone do this on their own? Like, I know you work with your clients. Can you just give a video to someone and have them work on the yoga nidra by themselves or not?
Oh yeah, totally. Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. I think I know people who have followed a do-it-yourself approach through finding the people that serve them and that really resonate with them online on YouTube. So you can absolutely do this through a process on YouTube. Where it becomes helpful and that might sound different than what other people are saying. And because I believe in people having an innate knowing of what they need. Then there'll be some moments where someone's gonna be like, I need more help. Like I need someone to guide me. And so then that's when they either reach out to the person that they've kind of tested with on YouTube and gone, you know what, I think I want to go a bit further with this person. And so then they hire that professional to go to that next step. But yes, you can. If you can pay attention and have a level of awareness of your own body, and can listen to the way that your body moves. Yes, I believe that people can do this. And then the yoga, there's so many yoga nidras online now that and the key though is, because I know that in the past some yoga professionals have said you need to have a teacher because it's dangerous or you can get yourself into trouble. And yes, they're not wrong about that. But I also have a fundamental belief, as I mentioned, in someone, if they can tap into their inner knowing, which of all the folks that I've ever met who are in the process of recovery, they have that knowing. They have that knowing. They may have forgotten about it, but they have that knowing. If you can just listen to the little whispers that are within you, you can absolutely feel into that, and then feel into when you need that extra support. And if you've got questions, then just reach out to the people that you're affiliated with, like in this group, and ask for advice that way, right? Those trusted resources. Yeah.
I know this is a very, very simple question. Like, would someone do things like just breathing techniques, like the box breathing or some of the breathing techniques that you see, and then sort of graduate to yoga nidra, for instance? It sounds like with the nidra yoga, there's a little bit more, not just the breathing, there's a little bit more of the self-awareness that's needed,
Yep.
like a component of participation. Whereas with some of the breathing techniques, it doesn't seem like you need that much participation. You're just sort of following, say, like a box breathing. You can just get a video and then just do the, like the
Yeah.
breathing. Just wondering if there's a sequence that makes sense for that individual. Maybe, as you're saying, if someone goes directly to yoga nidra, then maybe they do get overwhelmed, as I think someone else was saying, that maybe
Yeah.
something simpler, like, box breathing or some of the other simpler breathing techniques.
I think the best way to answer that question is through a story, a really short story. I trained a psychologist in the biomechanical aspects of what it was that I do. And we were having a kind of a conversation of how she would integrate this with her practice. And she said, you know what, Susie, what's interesting is I have to wait, because when most clientele who come to me are needing support of like just having someone listen to their story, and they don't have the resources yet to move the awareness towards themselves. So initially I'm listening to the story and I'm listening to all of what's going on, and I'm providing them resources to be able to support themselves. Then something happens, and I now know, this is her saying this, because I now know where I can actually integrate this, because when they get to a place where they've got enough sort of inner resiliency or inner resource that they can turn the lens back on themselves, that is when this can happen. Because to take the awareness back to yourself does require energy. So you're right, you do need that. And a breathing technique like box breathing, or even just, you don't even need to do the box breathing, because for some people, the breath retention can be tricky. It can be a really tricky practice. So even just following your breath on a 4 count or a 6 count or a 3 count in and out, and whether you want to lengthen one phase of that breath or you want to play around with the breath retention, that's a very kind of easy, like, try this out, go here, and feel the difference that makes. And then as you gain some of capacity to be able to feel the impact of a technique like a box breathing, then you can take it further into something like a nidra. And what's curious is that there's some very large accounts on YouTube of yoga nidra, and a lot of those they start off with a lot of extended body scans, so not the full practice. So that's a way of entering in. And frankly, if you fall asleep doing the practice, that's okay. I mean, I figure it's like, we ultimately want to help people get to a place where they're alert and aware and engaged the entire practice. But if they need to sleep, then I figure they need to sleep. Their system is saying sleep, right? So,
Maybe
yeah.
entries. Oh, pardon me.
What's that? Go ahead.
No, I was saying, so you're suggesting the entryway is a body scan, perhaps not like a breathing practice. Perhaps
Either or, because some people coming into their body is an unsafe request, right? For someone to feel parts of their body can be, that can stir things up. So for some people, starting with breath is the place to go. So I wouldn't say that there's this binary, here's the start. I would say that there's like, it might be breath. Like if someone doesn't want to, if I was to say to somebody, can you fill out this body diagram for me? And they're like, no, I don't want to fill out a body diagram. Or if I even show a body diagram, they're like, okay, let's talk about something else. Then going into a body scan is likely not going to be the thing for them. But doing something like breathing could be. So it sort of depends on where someone is at. I know I've trained a number of teachers who don't even call themselves yoga therapists because the type of clientele that they see, the word yoga conjures up all sorts of things for themselves. And so they've called themselves mind-body therapists. And again, if they've brought out body diagrams, then they might start somewhere entirely different. So I don't have a set answer for that because it really depends on a person's kind of lead up experience. Yeah. By the time someone comes to see me, typically they've already done some work, whether it's through a psychologist or a group program, and there's a level of awareness that they have. And now they're coming in for the next phase. Like if they've seen a psychologist or they've worked with aspects around their mental well-being, like they've gotten the resources to be able to now turn inward. So that's sort of where my sort of space, my slot in the space exists. Yeah. Yeah. Anything else that I can help you with?
We're going to show something before I interrupted you, like away, like maybe 20, 35 minutes ago. I think you were gonna show something, but I can.
Oh, yes. I mean, what I was going to do is I was going to walk you through a yoga nidra practice, but I'm seeing the time now. And I think that we don't quite have the time for that, but there is the link. And if you're interested in more links with some nidra practices, like different styles, then I can also forward those other ones there to you so that you have, that you and your members have more resources to be able to explore.
So with the yoga nidra practice, is that mostly like breathing with scanning? Is that the way I understand it? Is that the right understanding?
Well, if we're doing the full practice, then it starts off with an intention. It starts off, it continues on with a setting of a safe space. Typically, it then moves into like a body scan of sorts. Then that typically then goes into a breath awareness. And that often leads to an awareness of thought and or emotion. And there's a brilliant practice inside of Yoga Nidra that I think is terrific, which is called the practice of opposites, where you can be with, like if you're like on one of the layers of whether it's like a thought or an emotion, there might be a thought of like, I don't have enough time. Let's just pretend, right? Like that's a thought that's persistent for people. And then if you worked with the opposite of that thought, for example, it's like, I have enough time. Let's just pretend, right? And then you can play with that and notice how those thoughts resonate in your body. So you can just notice like, I don't have enough time. Notice when you say that, how it feels in your body and in your breath, which is typically why we tend to start with the body scan and the breath as the practice carries on. And then as that sort of sets the foundation, and then you see what I have enough time feels like and resonates in your body when you simply say that thought, because thoughts resonate in our body, much like emotions resonate in our body. And then you can actually be with both at the same time. It's like a trick because you can't. So you can't, like your brain cannot be with two opposites at the same time. It's impossible. It's absolutely impossible, which I verified with a neuroscientist just to make sure that this is what I learned was correct. But when it's like a trick to get you into presence. And so when you have to feel your way into the opposites. And then when you feel your way into your opposites, there's actually something that happens in the brain, which then you can have this big insight or small insight. And it's like this opening or this what's the word I'm thinking of? Opening, insight. I can't, there's another word I can't come to. And that opens up to like oh, who knew? I didn't actually like, there can be all sorts of things that you weren't aware of that you now become aware of, or like there can be what the awareness that arises, and just that practicing of like, I have enough time or I don't have enough time, something new comes up and you see the situation in a different way. Same thing with emotion. Like, where do you feel an emotion in your body, and how does that resonate, and where do you feel the opposite of that emotion? So that's typically when you practice through a yoga nidra practice, that's typically where you go through. And then sometimes people will take us up into more of the bliss layer, the joyful space, like as that sort of spiritual connection. A lot of practices don't go there, but you can go there. And then we bring the practice down and come back to the intention, and then notice how that intention resonates in your body now. And now with the new awarenesses from the opposites practice, what's now present, right? And that can be an amazing opportunity for growth and development. And when we can't solve problems with the same mindset that we came into the problem with. So the nidra practice can be quite fantastic. It's a reason why it can be great for helping people to gently retrain in an indirect way. That's actually quite direct, but not like direct, but an indirect way for people with trauma experiences or PTS or hypervigilance. It's just a way in that's I want to use the word gentler, but it's not quite it's not that it's gentler, but it's just more like there's an honoring of the network that is between our brain and our body, and operates with both sides of our brain, both the left and the right brain. So both the executive functioning as well as the body sensing sides of our brain coming together and working together. So that's sort of that overview of, which is when we are looking at thought and emotions, that can sometimes be difficult for people, which is why so many practices out there that are called yoga nidra are more like body scan, breath, and then reconnecting to intention, right? Yeah.
Does anyone have any questions? You guys want to ask Susie anything in particular? Questions you may have? We still have minutes. I don't know. Do you want to discuss anything, Susie, that you had intended on speaking about?
Oh, I mean, I was told this was only 30 minutes, so I was only prepared for 30 minutes. But if there's a question, I can address that over the next 5 minutes. I'm happy to answer any more questions.
Yeah, it's usually an hour. I'm not sure how we miscommunicated that. Does anyone have any questions? Okay.
So I don't have a question, but I just want to say thank you. This is Shelley Joe, and I'm the chairman of the Alliance, and I've done some yoga, but I would have never thought about adding yoga into the in the recovery program. So thank you very much. I didn't realize that there was a difference in the only yoga I was familiar with would be your static poses and things like that. So thank you for opening my mind and letting me know that there was something different.
Yeah, for sure. You're welcome. You're welcome.
And yeah, to further that thought, it would be great if you come back and actually do a practice with us. I would
Sure,
love that.
I'd love to. Yeah, I would love to.
That would be something that would be fantastic. Actually, I would love to yeah, I think I know the other kind of yoga, right? The movement yoga, and maybe even very heavy movement, like where it shouldn't even be called yoga, it should be called like something else, exercise.
It's more like exercise. Yes. It's exercise with a bit of breath and sometimes a bit of sweat. Yes. But yes. Yeah.
No, there's no breathing. Sometimes it's just,
This
I
is
mean,
true. It's true. Yes.
it's like movement, but some of the poses may look like yoga poses, but it's usually just movement. And occasionally, yeah, sometimes there's not even a breath connected to the movement many times.
Yes. Yeah.
Anyone else want to ask any questions?
I don't really have a question to bring in, but Susie, I just want to say thank you so much for your share. I'm a yoga teacher and I'm a part of the Alliance stuff. And I run groups in recovery, teaching yoga and teaching specifically breath work as a way to use it as emotion processing, being able to get and stay present, and yoga nidra for unwinding PTSD and coupling that with like sound therapy and things. So I really appreciate what you brought in today. Has absolutely resonated with it. So thank you for what you're doing. Thank you for the insights that you shared. And I just want to say I appreciate you.
Thank you. Thank you. Yeah, there's a lot of opportunity here with, I see a lot of, having been on the side that I was around the addiction side of things. I've seen a lot of people who have come out of like active addiction and they're on the recovery side of the stick. And there are a lot of them who are white knuckling, right? So they're not using, but they're white knuckling that experience. And when some of those folks, if they kind of take into something like a practice like these that we're talking about, that can really shift. Because it's one thing just to not use, it's another game to actually move into the next possibility. It's like a frequency change, right? Between being like, you can be in addiction, you can be not in addiction, and you can actually like get to a new space. And that's the part that's really possible, I think, which I think in the addiction sort of world is realizing now, because I think for a long time it was like, just don't use, right? And so there's been more and more practices that are out there that are supporting that there is actually this other, like if you're ready and you've got the ability or the capacity or the resources or the whatever, like the work that you're doing as well, it's helping enable that to happen, right? Yeah.
Actually, I want to go back to the first, one of the first questions I had, which is I work in a hospital for addictions. It's a conventional addictions hospital where they give sugar as food and medications for treatment or for detox, I guess I should say. So
yeah,
sometimes we're given this opportunity to present some sort of educational session to the patients that are there. So I was wondering, and this session that I can do as a physician there, I can do anywhere between 10 minutes, 15 minutes, something. So would you recommend a video that would resonate with people who are actively detoxing, but just get them that entree? It's nothing like, I don't want to do insight because they're not there yet. They might still be in active withdrawal. Is there something that you would recommend? Because usually now I just do a session on good food and eating and nutrition. And I just wonder if if I could just bring a little bit more of this kind of yoga, like the yoga, like meditation, this kind of yoga that would be effective. Maybe it's too early in their recovery.
I'm not sure it's ever too early to settle a nervous system. I'm not sure that's ever too early. It's how it's done, right? And so that's where the breathing practices can be really helpful and really gentle. Just like, actually what could actually be a really interesting resource is there's the late Mukunda Stiles. If you search online for joint freeing series, and the joint freeing series, it's joint freeing series. Like, so it's like, and the movements are like, you move your hands like this and you move your shoulders like this. Like, it's like you're just really, really basic movement. So something like that, when it's really just, you're just kind of moving parts of your body, like that is something that could be done. So it's called the Joint Freeing series. And you can find that all over. That's like PDFs are all over the place online. So you can just do that as a search or a chat GPT search even. I mean, I know that there's places in India. There was a fellow who used to come through Calgary quite a bit, and he worked with people in India with addiction. And I'm just not sure, like culturally and environmentally, there can be different scenarios. So I'm not necessarily sure, like what he would teach very, like he would do a lot of sun salutation and vinyasa and getting someone moving like that. And I'm not sure if that is ideal in our part of the world. I'm not sure if that's like for how people are recuperating or recovering. That would actually be a really kind of curious environmental, cultural experience to kind of note. I think a gentler approach here is more what's needed for most people. But again, it might be, I mean, you might have to, like, if you're in a group, I'm kind of blabbering here right now because there's a number of different thoughts that are coming into my head. Like there's the element of like the constitution of the person who's going through withdrawal. Like what does that look like? And there's even though there's generally a consistency amongst folks, there's their own individual constitution that's going through the process, right? So I think so some might like to have it like their system might need something vigorous, whereas other people might just simply, and just like joint free and like move their feet and move their toes and move their hips, and maybe not their hips, but maybe move their arms and breathe, like really simple ways to touch their, like not touch like touch, but connect with their physical being. Because that's, I'm imagining, I've not worked with people in active detox, but that might be that. I'm not sure how helpful it is to connect to your body when you're detoxed, or is it just coping through the process of going through the detox?
Yeah. So now, now I have to think about it more, right? So now most of what I teach is about eating healthy, and then they're like, but you're giving us sugar all day long. I'm like, well, that's the hospital. I'm talking to you about what you do when you go home.
Yeah.
So like there's low protein. So, what we talk about in the Alliance is, concentrate on high quality food, high fat, high good fat, and high protein, which we don't get in the hospital. It's pancakes for breakfast and whatever for lunch, maybe a little bit more protein at lunch. And so that's what I concentrate on. But I'm going to give it a little bit more thought to see if I can bring something else, something in addition to just talking, not just, but in addition to talking about.
Well, when someone starts to experience movement and they feel it from a somatic space, an embodied space, as opposed to understanding it, there might be a different result. Yeah. So I think the idea of doing some some version of a practice might be really great. Yeah.
This gives me ideas. Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. You're welcome. Yeah.
Hi, Susie. I had a quick questions and a comment. First of all, when you
Sure.
were talking about that joint freely, can you put it in the chat, like how?
Sure. Oh, yeah, for sure. Thank you
Thank you. Thank you. And also, I wanted to thank you for coming up. I also sit on the board at the Alliance, and I do yoga myself, and I work with addictions. So I think this is very, very educational, and I wish we had another hour so we could experience some of your technique. And maybe what we can do, we can invite you back if you're open to it, so we could do that next time. But I wanted to thank you for presenting this today. Appreciate
Yeah, you
it.
bet.
Thank you.
My pleasure. Yeah, my pleasure. Really great. Awesome.
great.
Well, yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, thank you so much. And I really appreciate, sorry about the misunderstanding about the hour versus the half an hour, but we would love to have you back, actually. I wouldn't mind going through the practice myself. So
Sure.
that would be great, actually. Thank you so much. This was like really awesome. And again, we'll have you back shortly.
All right, great. Thank you so much. Take care, everybody. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.